Christine from Elevate Theater Company. It's so fun that Thomas introduced us.
Yes, okay. I'm really excited.
I can't wait to introduce everybody at Sidewalk Talk to what you're doing. You want to know why? Because what I'd said to you before is what people don't get is that the arts bring another lens and layer that we can't feel when we're just talking. So can you tell us who you are and tell us about Elevate? Because you just had a big launch, so we need to have a little partay.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Tracy. I'm Christina D. Eskridge, and I'm the founder and executive director of Elevate Theater Company. We did just have a huge launch. I'm so excited. We started on November 19th, and we started with our winter series. So Elevate Theater Company is creating space for audiences and artists alike to explore health and well-being through the art of storytelling. We're essentially trying to use a play as a window into a particular health topic, and then we provide the expertise post-production for our audience and our artists to dive a little deeper. On November 19th, we started our winter series with part 1, Black Women's Reproductive Health. And in that series, we featured a play, called The Fund Shack by Chelsea D. And we were able to talk further about the themes of the play, which were around abortion services, access to abortion services. What is a doula? How does that work? And then we had actually a doula on our panel. We had an obstetrician and gynecologist, and then we had a policy advocate. And so we were able to really engage with the audience in this virtual platform. We're in such a rich time of engagement in different ways. And so it was really exciting to see the chatter in the chat and the questions come about, and then be able to provide our audience with additional resources on our website.
So I'm being a little distracted because there was a little delay. So I'm shutting down some of my windows because my sons would come down and say, "Mama, you have too many windows open." But I am listening. I have a question for you.
Sure.
What's the difference between just having a bunch of talking heads sitting in a row of chairs on a panel versus what you're producing at Elevate? Like, tell me the difference in what that's going to feel like for me as an audience member.
That's a great question. So first of all, you get the play first, right? So you not only are, confronted with feelings and emotions and interactions within the play, right? You're seeing a new experience on stage, right now a virtual stage, so that we keep our artists and audience safe. But then I often, when I leave the theater, I want to talk about it, or I have a question about it, or I want to get involved in some way, depending on the type of show that I went and saw. And what's really great about this is immediately after the show, there is that panel. Not everyone is a talking head. It's more of a conversation, but the audience gets to engage and ask their questions. And because it's virtual, anyone can ask anything, right? It's not about, oh, we only have time for 3 or 4 questions from the audience and we got to pick and choose these, and it's fair game to have anyone come and join us. And as the conversation goes, we continue to have it live. And then once it starts to lull and folks, decide they're hungry and they want to go get some food and they're going to continue to dig in deeper later, we go ahead and we wind it down. But it's a really, I think, engaging platform to be on YouTube Live while people are watching the show and then get to engage with the panel.
So I'm imagining then, if the topic is reproductive health for Black women, that you've got a setup where maybe you've got a woman going in to see her OBGYN, having some kind of interaction, or meeting with a doula for the first time, or maybe having, a negative interaction with a medical professional. Is that kind of the setup, so that you're actually getting to feel the scene?
Interesting question. So it's really a full-length play. So for the first one, unfortunately, we couldn't do the full show. We did excerpts from the Fun Shack. So you got these little scenes. So think of it more as vignettes and exchanges. And the way this play worked, and we do have, it is on our YouTube channel. So if you go and follow
okay, cool. I can't wait.
YouTube channel, there is a recording from the 19th that you can watch. And essentially what we do is we chose very specific scenes so that we could juxtapose both the real life interaction that you're talking about meeting the doula, and what does that mean? What is an abortion doula? What is a doula in general, and how do they support women throughout their pregnancy journey, whatever that might look like? But then we also had scenes from this sort of dystopian, futuristic courtroom that was incredibly at the time that our playwright wrote it, I don't think she knew it was going to be as poignant as it is today. It's just incredible to you have to go watch it, because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. But go to our YouTube channel, watch.
I can't even imagine having a baby right now with all this stuff going on.
Well, and what's cool about Zoom is, even though it's Zoom, right? It's Zoom theater. There's still these boxes. We're still trying to manipulate that and lean into that platform. But we got to use like filters. So some of the scenes are in black and white. Some of the scenes are in color. We used our backgrounds. We tried to pull the audience in despite the limitations of this really like meeting sharing software, right? Like this is really, really meant for meetings, but we're using it for theater. I do want to mention, though, that we have another show coming up on Thursday of this week. So on December 10th, we're doing part 2 of the winter series. And it's totally different from part 1 in that it is a different topic, different playwright, different way of using Zoom and engaging the audience, and 4 different panelists. So part 2 is called Health of Our Planet, People, and Pocketbooks. And it is going to explore the world of environmental health and justice, as well as consumer consciousness. So it's a comedy by playwright Jamie Roach. He's also going to be performing this piece, and it's 2020. This young man has a date, and the only thing standing in the way between him and this date is a quick run to the grocery store. Because it's 2020, he is going to make sure that they're safe, and he's cooking that evening. They're not going to go out and be on the town, if you will. But he's got to get a couple ingredients and then run back home and begin the meal. And the things that he encounters along the way of, oh, but should I recycle this? Or how much is this costing? And what about the carbon footprint of, like, there's so much engagement there. It's hilarious because it is everyone's rabbit hole.
Monologue.
In a monologue. And we're really excited to be sharing that with our audience this week. You can still get tickets. You can find the link on our website at elevatetheatercompany.com.
And for all you watching, and for those that are going to watch this recording later, some of the links are already in the comments, but I will make sure to double back and put them in the comments as well. Okay. Well, I want to know about you, though. You. We talked so much about Elevate, but how did you, Christina, you have a master's in public health?
I do.
You're kind of a smarty pants. You went to UC Berkeley, which is like an Ivy League of the West.
It is.
What's like, how did you get involved in this, and what's your mission? What's your reason for being alive?
My why. Thank you. That's such a great question, Tracy. So originally from Oakland, California, born and bred, I'm all about the town. I'm all about the Bay. And I started down this path of public health. I studied Spanish and political science in undergrad, and I was working in a clinic, working with primarily Spanish-speaking clients and patients, actually in the prenatal program.
Okay.
And I realized that I was in a system. I was working on Medicaid applications and providing insurance and things like that. And I realized I was in this system that may not be working well for communities of color, and primarily the population I was working with, limited English proficient clients and patients. And so I was like, I think I want to go back to school and understand this policy realm a little bit more. I want to understand the management of these systems that we are all sort of cogs in that wheel. And I went back to school at UC Berkeley, and I was all the while still doing plays, musicals on the side as like this hobby that was, a little like bigger than a hobby, but definitely.
So you were already into the arts prior to.
Yeah. I had been doing theater since the first grade.
Okay.
So a few years after grad school, I was working full time and doing a show and kind of having trouble balancing the two. And I thought, you know what? I'm not getting any younger. I still have a dream of performing more readily, more regularly, more in different venues and spaces outside of the community and regional theaters that I had been exposed to in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And I just decided one day, I quit my job and I moved to New York and I started a conservatory training at Cap 21 and, sort of immersed myself in musical theater and performing. And then I actually ended up started to work again in healthcare as my side gig. So I sort of flipped the two as
interesting.
And so I still work as a healthcare consultant part-time and continue with a foot in public health and with a foot in healthcare delivery for a health plan hospital and medical group. And then about 2 years ago, Elevate started to emerge in my mind. I did a show with a wonderful theater company called Trusty Sidekick. You all should check them out if you have children. They do shows exclusively for young audiences, and they're phenomenal, high quality kid. Like when I first thought, oh, am I going to do a kids show? I thought, I don't know. Is that where I want to go with my career? I thought I came here for Broadway, right? But I was completely wrong about kids shows and theatrical productions for young audiences. And so I ended up getting cast in this show called Up and Away at Lincoln Center. And it was for a festival called the Big Umbrella Festival, all for children on the autism spectrum and their families.
Wow.
And it clicked this moment of, there is an intersection of health and theater, and it can be for a very specific cohort or population of people, or it can be for anybody. And how can I look at it from the average theater goer's lens, right? If you are already coming to the theater, how can we use this story that you're about to see as fodder for your further exploration in your health? And so that's where Elevate was born. I call it Elevate because rising tides raise all ships. And I feel that the more information and engagement I can get out there, the more we can all rise together.
Well, I know why Thomas introduced. I mean, yeah, you just believe anything's possible, don't you?
I do.
You believe you can change the world. I love it.
One play at a time. One play at a time.
I get it. One play at a time. We say one conversation at a time. But, I just, it reminded me of something. I'm going to be a little political here, but something that AOC said after, I can't remember if it was after the election or if it was after George Floyd's murder, but she made a call to artists. She said, go make art. It's the only thing you can do right now. You just got to make some art, right, to get through.
Totally. I actually quoted Nina Simone in our first show, in our first part of the winter series. And I said, she said an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And so these times are all about how are we thinking through our experiences with the political system, with the healthcare system, with business, with education. I mean, all of these things are interconnected, which is why public health is so important to me, because if we don't think about these things from an intersectional place, we're actually not going to get to the root causes and start solving problems. And so I'm hoping that Elevate creates momentum towards solving problems, not relishing. Sometimes we relish a little bit in the problem and we diagnose it over and over again and we study the problem, but we don't actually move forward towards a new way of solving it, as opposed to learning more about what the problem is.
But the way that you're doing it, it sounds like to me with theater, is that, again, you're pulling this concept of intersectionality out of this intellectual frame. And you're actually having people experience intersectionality, because I still think people are confused about A, what it is, or B, all the different ways that they're intersecting with all of these different identities that they're coming across inside themselves and outside themselves. And I only think art, I'm just kind of getting turned on by your work, because I'm like, there's like a bunch of things firing in my brain right now. I'm like, oh yeah, because I think that's the only way that people are going to really get it, is if they saw it in the form of art. Super cool. I'm super like crushing on you right now. Gotta admit. No,
Thank you.
it's really clever because I don't, well, and this is, I suspect I'm new to storytelling. When I had a speaking coach, one of the things that the speaking coach told me is you're a terrible storyteller. She said, you're, and I think it's because I'm a first college graduate in my family. So I have this, not enoughness. And so I always have to prove that I'm smart. I have this weird, like, oh, I've got to look and be smart because I have this hidden secret that I'm a first college graduate. But she said, no, it's the storytelling that changes hearts and minds. It's not all the stuff that you know. And it seems like you've just been able to integrate that out the gate, this intellect that you have and the smarts that you have from going to UC Berkeley with this beautiful capacity to storytell in ways that really impact people's lives. It's super cool.
Thank you so much. That's very kind. I think that the story is what opens the door, right? Because if you can relate to someone's story, even if you don't understand it necessarily at its core because you are so far removed from that thing. I was talking to a friend who is a white man who came to see this show, the first show about Black women's reproductive health and the Fund Shack. And he said he was so honored to be in a space where he could start thinking about things that don't seem to directly impact him, but he started to put the pieces together about how if one group of people is oppressed without access to healthcare, without support, and we talked a lot about the weathering of Black women. And if you're not familiar with that, it's this concept that just by virtue of being a Black woman in America today causes stress, causes health challenges, causes a quote unquote weathering effect, right? And it impacts our health on a cellular level. Yeah. And he was just like, I now see things through a different lens, right? And so it wasn't about him having a uterus necessarily, and being Black, but it was about him recognizing where there is a challenge in the fabric of our health system, in the fabric of the way that we're engaging Black women and their health. And he now was like, oh, I see where I can support this company. I can, learn more here. The next day he sent me 2 articles that he found and it was actually a lot of people started sending me articles because they realized, oh, this isn't a new problem. I just have a new lens on it.
I can't tell if I'm speaking from ego or if I'm excited. It might be a little both. But do you know Loretta Ross? You know Loretta Ross, right? Longtime Black activist for Black women's reproductive health. Do you know her?
Oh my goodness. I'm embarrassed to say that I am not familiar. So now I need to go and do
it's okay. I'm trying to get her on the podcast. I actually had a really lovely phone conversation with her. She's got a new book coming out. But yeah, she's
I'm looking her up right now.
You need to maybe I've anyway.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Awesome. See, this is the other thing about
this was what, before you go there, she wanted restaurant recommendations in Oakland, and I wish I would have known you then, because I'm like, she goes, I'm going out there to speak at a conference. Can you tell me where to eat? And I'm like, well, I can tell you the places that I go. See, it's too bad we didn't know each other, because I'd have been like, hey, so where do we send her to?
You know what's funny is right now, I can't tell. I haven't lived there in about 8 years, and so I can't tell you all of the amazing places that I used to go to that are still around. But I'm hoping to be back soon and be able to experience Oakland as in all its glory, past and present. But yes, this is actually one of the things that I love about these kinds of conversations, because every time I start talking about Elevate and about what we're doing, that, wait, do you know this person? Do you know about this initiative that's happening? Do you know about, and my lens, I'm not an expert in any of these topics. The 4 topics for the winter series are really topics that are interesting to me, but that I am not an expert in, and I want to learn more. So I'm so pumped that you brought up
Thanks
Loretta.
for saying that. Now I feel a little less intimidated by you. So what you're saying is because I'm having this new relationship to my humility, right? Mm-hmm. It's so freeing, because I get to be like a child that is in a constant state of wonder and go, okay, I don't have to be a know-it-all. I can just be like, okay, I want to know about Black reproductive health and equity. Mm-hmm. I don't know, and then start doing the work and then just follow that thread line rather than, I don't know. I think sometimes in Bay Area we can get a little like, I know everything about this topic. And I'm like, just go into wonder.
I think anybody can get into that place, right? And then I definitely feel intimidated sometimes, right? Where I'm trying to open people's minds to a new way of thinking, but I may not be the expert on all of that topic. But that's the point of having the panel, right? That's the point of gathering additional support and information and people who are doing work in that space. Because I don't actually ask any of our artists to come with statistics or to come with the quote unquote academic accurate depiction of whatever the topic is on our docket. And the reason I do that is because I want there to be a genuine connection with the topic. I want there to be a genuine experience that the audience has. And then I want us to move into the conversation with the experts. Otherwise, it's feeding you something from a lens of preaching versus an invitation.
That. And it lets everybody stay in their own emotional state and feel an embodied presence, both the actors and the recipients of the play. Otherwise, if they're getting preached at, I think we immediately go into our head and we're not as moved. That's my experience anyway.
And how many times have you been to something where you're like, I know, and you sort of shut down, right? Instead of, totally. Tell me more, right? I often say, after a show, I think I said this already, like after a show, I'm interested in doing more after I leave the four walls of the theater. And it's challenging sometimes with with regular shows because you've already spent 2 hours there. You've already spent all your money. You've already done all these things. And the idea of the talk back happens often with the actors on stage and sometimes the playwright and the director and things like that. But what if the topic we're unraveling here, we actually have those who are masters in that space who can talk to us and have a conversation. And right now, we're exploring what happens inside the four parts of the Zoom square instead of the four walls of the theater.
Which is, I think Sharon also, she had made a comment. She thinks it's kind of genius. I'll put it back here, using Zoom to create plays like a theater. That's amazing. I think we can look at it as a constraint or look at it as an opportunity. I feel like there's an opportunity to play with. And I see you leaning in and just embracing that in a really playful way.
Yeah, I want to empower people to seek out information. And if we can use stories to do that, I've always had moving experiences as an artist and as a patron, right, of the arts. I went to see, actually, this is more about me, right? I went to see Audra McDonald in Lady Day at Emerson Bar and Grill on Broadway at Circle in the Square. And it was probably my favorite show that I've ever seen. It was a one-woman, she did a one-woman show. And she's depicting Billie Holiday towards the end of her life. And I spent the first maybe 15 minutes trying to figure out how she was doing that with her voice. Like technically, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. The talent on that stage was just, I wanted it to permeate my skin, right? I was like, give me any ounce, like, does any of this rub off? I'm in the second row, And not only is she my favorite performer because of that dynamic, because she's able to be anyone. But I spent the next, 2/3 of the show crying because as a Black woman in the US, as an artist, I just recognized the shoulders that I was standing on. I recognized the fact that I don't have to go through the back door because of the pioneers that came before me. And I know that there is a long way for us to go. I know we are not there yet, right? I know there is still tremendous discrimination and barriers within the entertainment industry and within any industry, really, right? For Black women especially. But I was so moved by this performance. And it was one of those moments where I thought, And after the show, I couldn't stop crying, right? And I finally got it together because, you know, Audra's coming to come out and I'm going to get her autograph and I got to get your shit together, right? Like, whatever. I ended up seeing her and I was like, you're you. And I just was overcome. And I hope she understood what I was trying to say, that I thank her for telling this story so well.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of storytelling that moves us to become the champions of whatever the fight is we want to be a champion for, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, it's about elevating artists. It's about elevating stories of people of color. It's about elevating health topics and things that impact all of us in any kind of way, and making sure that we make those connections between our everyday activities and the consequences of those activities for the ripple effect of that for our community.
Yeah. You know, I really want to amplify what Sharon says here. She says, look, it's the panel at the end that elevates, haha, no pun intended, that it's not just revisiting the harms in these communities, but it's about sort of activating solutions. Right? Because and you can read the comment there, but I think that's an important ingredient that what you're bringing to the table, which is, where do people go from here? Because it's one thing to retell these stories. I feel like there's something very dignified about saying, now, what are we responsible for doing? Because we're powerful. We're powerful people. We are dignified people. And it's time to take action and stand in our dignity and not just tell the sad story.
Absolutely. And so as a plug, a shameless plug for part 3, we haven't released all of the details yet, but part 3 is going to be the health of our protest. And it's going to be about Black fatigue and Black resilience. And the panel I'm formulating now is really going to be a group of resiliency experts for Black folk. And it's going to be a really awesome conversation about what do we do. We're doing it we're doing that piece specifically in January because we want to start the year off with tools in our tool belt and move forward. And it's not just for Black folks, but it's also for our allies to absorb and understand and respond as well, right? It is Elevate is open for everyone, and we are choosing these very specific topics because A, they're near and dear to my heart and I want to learn more about them, but B, because they're so immensely important in our society right now. Yeah. Right? We don't want to do topics that are not relevant. We want to do things that are about today. So that's why we've decided, Black women's reproductive health is huge. And important. And there have been a lot of abortion bans in recent history that have been suppressing our ability to gain access to the services that are necessary. And the policing of women's bodies, we all know how that manifests and who that actually obstructs from gaining access to services. Environmental health and justice, we're exploring what a conscious consumer can do so that their impact and carbon footprint is, minimized as much as possible, depending on the actions and activities that they choose. And then talking about Black fatigue and Black resilience, how can we make sure that we're supporting our Black brothers and sisters going forward, and that we're not, COVID has hit the Black and brown community so incredibly hard. So how can we ensure that we are uplifting that community instead of just continuing to highlight the disparities that we know already exist?
Yeah. Super cool. I'm super excited. And now I want to pick your brain and ask your advice.
Hopefully I have an answer for you.
Well, we can spitball. We don't have to be experts. Remember the humility and being humble beginners. I studied political science in undergrad before I became a psychotherapist. And I've been feeling really worried about our democracy. The polarization is intense. I understand the outrage. That makes sense to me. I don't think everybody is meant to be a bridge builder for exactly the resilience reasons you brought up. And for those that have been marginalized and harmed and traumatized, that may not be their call to be bridge builders right now. So I'm not starting to say, let's have a kumbaya moment and throw lipstick on this pig. But I am saying, if you're interested in saving democracy so that we can all collectively come together to the table and act like a community again and pass policies that help everybody, then we're going to have to be able to talk. But where do we begin? And so Sidewalk Talks, Giving Tuesday fundraiser is to teach people how to listen to just friends and family, just the people that already love us. What kind of play would Elevate do? I mean, because I'm just trying to imagine the performance around this one, and then the expert. I mean, that would be such a fun play, but may not be interesting to you right now. But it's interesting to me. And let's spitball around this because I'm feeling worried. So you need to understand. I grew up in Southern California that's largely Republican. Half of my Facebook feed is Republican from friends from high school, and all the far right to middle right to center right leaning things. Learning how to discern who to dialogue with and who to say, oh, that's going to be a boundary has been a key, which is why we're choosing to focus this on friends and family, because those are the folks that already have a motivation to be in dialogue with you.
Yeah. So what kind of play would we have? I think I'm seeing a Thanksgiving table conversation. Right? I'm seeing something along the lines of things that actually have maybe not manifested directly in my family, but I could imagine if we were brave enough to go there might be some of those conversations. But I think it's not really about putting the stereotypical viewpoint on stage, right? It's not about putting these two opposing forces on stage. I think it's actually about the polarization is really coming from a place of fear and pain, I would say, right? It's coming from a place of, you have done this to me, or your people, your side of the aisle has done this thing to me, and therefore I am afraid, or I'm angry, or I'm, not interested in having this dialogue with you. And I think if we get to the root of that pain, it's fear, right? It's fear of things changing. Change is really, really hard. In my health care and healthcare consulting world, we talk a lot about change management. How do you manage behavior change? Because we want you to do this work with this widget instead of this widget, but this is the one you've been working with for 5 years, and you're not necessarily ready to try this one. How do we make it, what's in it for you? How do we talk about the benefits of that? And how do we make sure that you understand the bigger picture of why this is important? So that way you can grapple and then eventually come to the table with this widget and do it. I think it's not as easy with emotions and policy, because we all know that our vote matters. Now more than ever, we see that every single tiny vote, you think it's small, but it is big. It has a huge impact, right? So we know that the vote matters. And we only vote every 2 years, maybe every 4 years, maybe, right? We're not as engaged on a regular basis. And so I think it's about uncovering the pain and the fear, whatever story does that well. I think it's about recognizing that every little bit of dialogue matters, and every conversation matters and can impact folks. And then I think the last thing I would say is in this fantasy play that we might dream up in the future, there's got to be a little humor, because we are
need to let off steam
so damn seriously, right? And again, going back to that idea of like sitting in the challenge, sitting in the problem, like just soaking it in and not looking at the solution. I think we have to get to a place where we can laugh a little bit about the fact that we are so polar opposites at this point, right wing, left wing, that we can't even have a conversation. Right? I mean, it's probably a comedy at the Thanksgiving table with people who ultimately divulge their fear and their pain, right?
I'm in. I'm sold to do it.
Let's build it. Let's do
I
it.
love the comedy part of it. It's so disarming.
I think I mean, you'll see on Thursday when you come to the show, it is important to have a little.
I love that assumptive close, by the way. You'll see when you come to the show. I loved that. Salesperson.
When you come to the show on Thursday, you'll see how humor can support our understanding. It can like drive, some action. It can drive some engagement.
Well, I also would like to see our ancestors around the table laughing at us going, you think you have it hard? Your little political fights on social media? Seriously? Like, you talk about standing on the shoulders of Billie Holiday. I mean, come on. We don't have it hard, comparatively speaking.
Comparatively speaking, yes. And it's all relative too, right? So I recognize that there are so many systems of oppression that have had such longevity that it's part of our everyday DNA to be in this oppressive space, right? And I think, yeah, Thomas, I think humor, you're right. It creates this common ground for us because, sometimes it is tough to think about how we dismantle. How do you dismantle something that has always been built broken? It's all like this country has been built on stolen land, stolen people, forced enslaved labor. And then we just built legacy system on legacy system on legacy system that is just broken. It's all broken. And it's like a house of cards. And if we pull one thing, it's all going to come down. And I think that's where the fear comes from, right? That's where this like pain and fear comes from. There's pain on the side of the oppressed, and there's fear on the side of the oppressor.
Boy, Christina, you have this beautiful way of really advocating for communities of color while holding the complexity and empathy for what's frightening for folks in power. That's a dance that's hard to do.
Thank you. I'm still learning it myself. I'm not always, that.
Believe you me, I get it. People think I'm a good listener, and then they see me lose my cool, and I'm like, yeah, see, I'm not that good of a listener all the time. But I'm learning something from you. The way that you're at least verbalizing it in this moment with me is pretty profound, because I think that you're able to name, and I really like putting the fear of change at the center of it. There's something very disarming and non-shaming about acknowledging that we all have a fear of change. And that, I was even thinking of like changing my software that I use for my email. It's like, forget about it.
Facebook changes their interface. Drives me crazy because I've gotten used, or the phone, right? You get a new phone and you're like,
forget about it.
Where is this thing? What is that? Any kind of think about any small change you try to make in your life, right? I want to stretch every morning. Does that happen every morning? No, but I try, right? But you have to create these like anchors in your space and these opportunities to remind you to do the new thing. And I think when systems are built in a way that doesn't really allow you to put in an easy anchor, an easy reminder to do the right thing, we default to our comfort zone, just as human nature. So how do we take take those anchors and plant them firmly into this stolen soil and make it so that we are pivoting and turning around in the other direction and doing what's right and not what's easy?
Yeah. Doing what's
right. I think that's what's so beautiful about these conversations with family. Is it easy to let family slide? Is it easy to let family be who they are and not question it. And I think it's important that we recognize that those are the people who have our best interests at heart. Those are the people who we have a window into and a vested interest in maintaining good relationships. And so can every time we talk, we have a little progress towards a more common understanding when it comes to political beliefs, when it comes to some of these moral, quote unquote, moral issues that we've turned into policy, things of that nature. I think the more we get talking, the more we get sharing our stories and why they're important to us, the better off we'll be.
So here's how you're going to imprint the training that we're going to do on Sunday. Here's what I'm going to add from this conversation. I'm going to add humor.
Yes.
I'm going to add humor.
Please do.
Oh, and I'm funny.
I love it. Me too. That's what I tell people. I'm like, you have to meet me. I'm funny.
You know what someone told me? They told me, because I'm really irreverent as a couples therapist. Oh, I can say this on here. So, well, I was just doing an interview with someone earlier and they have little kids watching her show. So I had to make sure I didn't curse. I'm going to abbreviate the curse words, but I hand out stickers at the end of couple sessions. And when they've been really hard, I'll say, pick a sticker. And they have a choice of 4 stickers. One says, F yeah. One just says F. One says F no. And the other one says, what the F? And so I had a colleague tell me, you're the marvelous Mrs. Maisel of couples therapy. And I said, I'll take it. I'll take it.
I love it. I mean, sometimes we just need that little bit of humor to get us out of taking ourselves so seriously. And, I am a hard at myself. I will admit that. And I am constant, especially, putting on this show in the middle of a pandemic, like putting on 4 shows.
That takes a sense of humor.
4 shows, 4 months on Zoom, on YouTube, on what are you doing? What are you thinking? There's a pandemic going on. But you know what? I kept saying to myself, well, it's all going to be free. So people don't even have to worry. I don't even have to worry about anybody not being able to see it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to be online. So all of New York can see it. Like, it doesn't have to be in this one tiny black box. We originally we were looking at a space downtown, and it was going to be, it was going to have the play, and then it was going to have a health fair on the outsides, right?
Oh, brilliant.
So you'd be doing the play in the round, and then as you leave, you'd be already immersed in the health fair. And that's still the vision for when it's safe to do so. But what's really cool about it is, like, now we can reach more organizations, we can reach more of our community in New York and beyond. And we're able to really, I don't know, like, this is crazy, but it's so much fun. And I'm so honored to be working with the playwrights and the artists that I've met. The panelists, like, if you had told me a year ago that I would be chatting with professors and physicians and doulas and advocates in policy and environmental health, I would have been like, okay, doing what? Like, what are you talking about? Elevate has really evolved over the last really 10 months. We started probably summer 2019, really formulating what's the mission, what's the vision, how is this going to work, blah, blah, blah. And then once March hit, I thought, oh, we got to put that on the back burner. It's not going to work. And then about August, I thought, you know what? Now is the time. Stories are important. People need to hear them. People need a break from, again, living in that negativity and find some solutioning.
Find some solutioning. I love that. Hey, and we just talked longer than I expected, but that's okay.
Oh, wow.
It's okay. It's 12:45 for me. I'm in Germany, but you know what? I go to bed at 1. I wake up around noon. So don't tell anyone. Hey, so I have a little idea, a little plug for you when COVID's over, when you get the theater space. I think you should also have Sidewalk Talk listeners, or at least chairs. We've done this at events before, where you have one sign that says, I am listening, and then it gives them instructions for the intention that they're bringing to their listening. And then you have another chair with a sign on that says, I am being heard. And I wasn't sure that it was going to fly, but we did it at Wisdom 2.0. And we even left the booth unmanned. And I saw people sit down of their own accord. They would read the sign, and then someone would sit and just wait until someone wanted to sit down and be heard. And then when they were done, they would get up and switch chairs. And they would really hold the reverence of listening. And I think you should have that in the health fair section outside. So that's my little plug for you.
I love that idea. And I have a feeling Sidewalk Talk and Elevate are going to have some synergy down the road as we continue to evolve. There's no doubt.
This was like a great way to finish my day. I'm really excited by what you're doing. And I always, whenever Thomas introduces me to someone, and he doesn't a lot, so I always know that when he introduces, he's curated somebody that I'm going to have some magic with. And Thomas, are you still here? Thank you.
Thomas, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Tracy, for having me. This is
Ron wanted to say something too.
What else? Just wanted to say.
She said that she saw your first episode too.
She did see the first one. Sharon, I know Sharon, yes. Hey, Sharon, Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for your comments. This is awesome. I'm so pumped. I hope everybody gets a chance to check out elevatetheatercompany.com and come to see part 2 of the winter series, Health of Our Planet, Our People, and Our Pocketbooks, with a play first by Jamie Roach called The Morality of Broccoli, followed by a panel discussion.
I'm sold on Morality of Broccoli.
It's so
All right. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming, and thanks for supporting our Wish You Knew Me campaign. And just have a great rest of your week, and good luck Thursday. If I don't make it, what time is it at?
It's at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. 8, and where are you?
9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. It'll be 2 in the morning. Probably.
Oh no, you'll see the stream. You'll see
I'll see the YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get the link. I'll make sure I get it to you specific.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Tracy. Have a great day.